What if I told you that the greatest enemy of your freedom is what you love the most?
Pleasure, comfort, entertainment. While you relax, someone is sharpening the chains. In this video, you'll discover how modern society, without torture, without dictatorship, without handcuffs, may be silently enslaving us, and worse, with our consent. Based on the works of Aldous Huxley and the experiments of B.F. Skinner, we're going to reveal how dopamine became a tool of domination, how distraction became a prison, and why the happiness you feel might be nothing more than social anesthesia. If you believe you're in control of your life, get ready to question everything. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. This phrase, written nearly 2 centuries ago, is the key to understanding modern slavery, which doesn't impose pain, but pleasure. That doesn't demand obedience, only that you never question. This is not a comfortable video, but it may be the one that finally wakes you up. If you're not afraid to explore the shadows, subscribe to the channel. When we think of an oppressive regime, the image that usually comes to mind is that of a brutal, totalitarian, watchful state, like the one described by George Orwell in 1984. A society where everything is monitored, thought is controlled by force, and fear is the main tool of domination. A world with cameras on every corner, where even emotions are policed, and love is a crime. For Orwell, the future was dark because it would be ruled by pain. But what if domination doesn't require fear? What if, instead of whips, all it takes is a constant flow of dopamine? Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, offered an even more disturbing vision. A world where people are controlled not by oppression, but by pleasure. No screams, no torture, no resistance. Just laughter, pleasure, relief, and paradoxically, a complete absence of freedom. Instead of chaining people with iron, society keeps them busy with drugs, endless entertainment, and shallow gratification. Orwell's pain is visible, brutal, inescapable. Huxley's pleasure is subtle, addictive, and voluntary. The genius and the terror of Huxley's vision lies in realizing that the most effective form of oppression is the one that doesn't appear to be oppression at all. It's the one that offers comfort in exchange for autonomy. In Brave New World, the citizens don't rebel because they don't feel the need for freedom. They're so filled with stimuli, so drowned in dopamine and distractions, that they don't even notice something was taken from them. The prison is padded with cushions, the walls are invisible, and the prisoners are too busy enjoying themselves to even consider escaping. While Orwell imagined a future of brutal resistance against the state, Huxley saw something far sadder, a people who forget how to desire freedom, a people who accept the imposed rules, as long as they have bread, circuses, and a good dose of SOMA. And if we look closely around us, it's not hard to see which of the 2 prophecies resembles our current reality. We are surrounded by distractions, stimuli, and comforts designed to capture our attention, regulate our mood, and keep us docile, and we call it freedom. This comparison between Orwell and Huxley is more than a literary curiosity. It's a key to understanding the present. Orwell prepared us to fight against tyrants, but Huxley warned us of something far more insidious: tyranny disguised as well-being. A dystopia that doesn't look like dystopia. A world where pleasure becomes a tool of manipulation, and where freedom dissolves, not in violence, but in laughter, addictions, and distractions. And while we're too busy consuming, enjoying, watching, and clicking, the silence of control settles in, soft, efficient, irreversible. While Huxley was writing fiction, B.F. Skinner, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, was conducting experiments that would radically transform our understanding of human behavior. He believed that living beings, including humans, were not driven by free will, but by stimuli, reinforcements, and conditioning. Skinner didn't need walls, chains, or threats. All he needed was a reward at the right moment. With that, it became possible to rewrite an organism's behavior. In his classic experiments, Skinner placed rats in specially designed boxes Each time a rat pressed a lever, it received a small portion of food. It was simple, but the effects were profound. The animal learned to associate the behavior with pleasure, and the more rewards it received, the faster the behavior became solid, as if its very freedom of choice was dissolving. The rat was no longer choosing to press the lever. It needed to. Skinner didn't limit himself to positive reinforcement. He also tested punishments, aversive stimuli, and extinction strategies. But the most frightening result was this: pleasure was more effective than fear. Behaviors shaped by reward were longer lasting, more consistent, and required less maintenance. In other words, a happy rat is easier to control than a terrified one. And if that's true for rats, what does it mean for us? Huxley, aware of Skinner's findings, realized that the future of domination wouldn't depend on weapons, but on the silent conditioning of the masses, done through carefully calibrated rewards. No more dictators, just social engineers. No more torture chambers, just constant doses of dopamine likes orgasms, fast food, and entertainment. A new type of prison, self-managed, self-consented, self-celebrated. Skinner, on the other hand, didn't see this as dystopia. He believed that conditioning could be used to build a rational, peaceful, scientific society. His book Walden 2 describes a utopia based on behavioral manipulation. But the problem is obvious. Who decides what counts as good behavior? Who selects the reinforcements? Who holds the power to shape souls in the name of the greater good? The same mechanism that can teach empathy ... can also teach submission. The same tool that can help ... can also enslave. Comment below. I choose freedom if from this day forward you're going to stop anesthetizing yourself with distractions and start living with awareness, courage, and truth. In the universe of Brave New World, fear is unnecessary because there is SOMA, a miraculous drug that eliminates suffering without touching its cause. It doesn't heal. It doesn't transform. It merely silences. In any crisis, sadness, or discomfort, just swallow a pill. The pain disappears. The unease vanishes. The soul is anesthetized. A small dose for mild discomfort, a larger dose for existential anguish. SOMA was not just a medicine. It was a political instrument. It offered what Huxley called a holiday from reality. It made citizens more docile, easier to manipulate, more receptive to propaganda. And the most disturbing part, they wanted to take SOMA. There was no imposition. Servitude came with a sweet taste and a relaxing effect. An entire society domesticated ... voluntarily. 70 years after the novel's publication, reality has caught up. The number of people using psychotropic drugs increases each year. Medications for anxiety, antidepressants, opioids, all promise what SOMA already offered: peace without questioning. Today, we don't need a state to force us to swallow pills. The system simply makes them widely available. As Huxley predicted, it will be enough to make them available, and people will take them. And we're not just talking about drugs in the traditional sense. The SOMA of our time is in the infinite feeds, in the distraction algorithms, in the instant rewards. A video, a meme, a purchase, a match, a like. Each notification is a microdose. Each distraction is a sedative. We no longer feel anxiety, but we also no longer feel truth. We are always anesthetized, comfortable, too calm to awaken. The question that remains is, what are we trading for this calm? Are we, by rejecting pain, also rejecting the impulse for transformation? Restlessness is what leads humans to question, to seek, to change. SOMA eliminates that, not through force, but through gentleness, through softness, like a poison disguised as an embrace. Humans have always sought pleasure. But what happens when pleasure becomes state policy? In Brave New World, social control wasn't limited to SOMA. The state also promoted institutionalized sexual promiscuity as a way to tame internal tensions. Monogamy was abolished. The idea of family erased. The new commandment was simple. Everyone belongs to everyone. From childhood, citizens were taught to satisfy any impulse, immediately, without guilt, without reflection. Sex was no longer connection, surrender, or transcendence. It was distraction. It functioned like a biological drug, powerful, repeatable, and always at hand. Thus, the energy that could generate questioning, rebellion, or a search for meaning was redirected to the bed. Pleasure became an escape valve. Libido domesticated. The parallel with our world is clear. There has never been so much access to sex or its simulacrum. Pornography is one click away, available 24 hours a day, with algorithms that know your desires better than you do. Sex ceased to be an experience and became content. It requires no presence, no bond, no truth. Just consume, ejaculate, and move on. The body is stimulated, the soul ignored. But sex is only one cog in a larger system, the system of continuous distraction. Everything is designed to capture attention and keep it in a constant state of superficial euphoria. Social media, endless series, short videos, games, never-ending feeds, all exist to ensure that silence never comes. Because in silence, a doubt may arise, and in doubt, freedom can be born. Incessant distractions of the most fascinating nature. That's how Huxley describes state-sanctioned entertainment, and that's what we live in. Endless entertainment, where the goal is not to inform, nor to transform, but to numb. While we laugh, dance, and swipe our fingers across screens, time passes, the mind fades, and the system breathes a sigh of relief. There will be no revolution while we're too busy with the next episode. There will be no questioning as long as pleasure keeps flowing. In one of his darkest statements, Aldous Huxley warned that the future might not be a concentration camp surrounded by electric fences, but rather a painless concentration camp where people would be conditioned to love their prison, not by imposition, but by saturation, not by repression, but by excess. The enemy would not be scarcity, but abundance. An abundance carefully designed to keep you exactly where you are, quiet, busy, and blind. We live in the age of infinite distractions. Every second, dozens of stimuli compete for our attention. A notification, a video, a sound, an emoji, each offering a small reward, a dopamine spike. But together, they form a highly effective system of psychic anesthesia. The human mind, overwhelmed by micro-gratifications, loses its capacity for depth, for focus, for reflection. Thought becomes fragmented, consciousness dissolves, and freedom evaporates. Modern entertainment is no longer just a pastime. It is an infrastructure of behavioral control. Algorithms decide what you will see, for how long, with what emotional intensity. Everything is calculated to capture the maximum attention with the minimum effort. And the more you give in, the harder it becomes to regain control. It's like being on a treadmill that slowly speeds up until stopping feels impossible. You keep running, not by choice, but by habit. This is the most effective prison ever created, one where the prisoners have access to every stimulus they desire, except inner silence. Introspection has been replaced by playlists, solitude by likes, existential pain by homeopathic doses of instant pleasure. But what looks like comfort is containment. What looks like freedom is distraction. And what looks like entertainment is behavioral engineering. The painless concentration camp needs no guards. It is maintained by screens, by habits, by notifications that vibrate in your pocket like invisible collars. The cell is open. The door is unlocked, but no one wants to leave, because outside is discomfort, doubt, silence, and inside there is quick relief. But that relief has a price: the gradual loss of psychological autonomy. And when the mind becomes incapable of disconnecting, it ceases to be free, even without realizing it. The dystopia of our time does not impose itself with tanks or explicit censorship. It insinuates itself like background music, soft, pleasant, and hypnotic. The true threat is not being forced to obey, but ceasing to question. The real danger is waking up every day, completing our tasks, consuming our pleasures, following our algorithms and never realizing that we stopped being alive. We have become a civilization of sleepwalkers, eyes open, but spirits asleep. This collective drowsiness is not an accident. It is the product of a system carefully calibrated to reduce the critical capacity of the human mind. When everything is comfortable, when everything is immediate, when everything is simplified into memes, clicks, and slogans, deep thought dies of starvation. People stop seeking meaning because they are already satisfied with stimuli. The soul has no space to grow because the body is always distracted by small rewards. The question that arises is disturbing. Is all of this planned? To what extent is this collective intoxication intentional? Are we being manipulated by social engineers, as Huxley feared? Or did we build this trap ourselves, a prison constructed by our own refusal to face reality? Perhaps the answer doesn't matter as much as the effect, because, planned or not, the result is the same. A society where people no longer have the mental tools to resist. Frederick Douglass, formerly enslaved and a symbol of the fight for freedom, once said, "When a slave becomes a happy slave, he has effectively renounced everything that makes him human." This sentence echoes strongly in the present, because the modern slave carries no visible chains. He wears headphones. He lives connected. He has access to all the entertainment in the world, but has lost access to himself. And little by little, he stops noticing that something is wrong, because the pain was eliminated, but along with it, so were restlessness, doubt, and the thirst for truth. The sleepwalking citizenry is the final stage of conditioning. It is not an oppressed population. It is a population too satisfied to care. Rebellion is replaced by indifference, outrage by sarcasm, the future by distractions. And meanwhile, freedom becomes an archaic concept, irrelevant, even uncomfortable. After all, who needs freedom when you have a screen? Faced with all of this, a choice rises like an invisible fork in the road, to resist or to surrender. We're not talking about external revolutions, but internal battles, silent, solitary, constant. Resistance in this new world does not begin with shouting or barricades. It begins with a simple gesture, turning off the screen, refusing easy comfort, facing the void, and accepting that awakening, more often than not, hurts more than sleep. To resist means to be willing to feel, and, even more, willing to suffer. To suffer through the silence, the absence of distraction, the restlessness of not knowing. Because the price of consciousness is high. It demands attention. It demands effort. It demands presence. But it is only through it that freedom can begin to bloom. True freedom is not the absence of external chains. It is the reclaiming of dominion over one's own soul. On the other hand, surrender seems easier. It is choosing the already paved road, immediate comfort, the smoothness of programmed pleasures. It is continuing to scroll, laughing at distractions, avoiding the mirror. It is not asking questions, not feeling discomfort, not craving depth. And little by little, it is disappearing into oneself, until only a resigned shadow remains of what was once an awakened human being. But there is something non-negotiable within us, something that even the most efficient conditioning machine cannot fully eliminate: the impulse to seek meaning. That spark, no matter how small, remains lit in some forgotten corner of the soul. And it burns brighter when we realize that pleasure is not enough, that comfort does not fulfill, that there is something in us that longs for more, for truth, for depth, for real freedom. This is the choice we face: to remain asleep in a comfortable prison, or to awaken, even if it means suffering, even if it means swimming against the current of an anesthetized civilization. To resist is not heroism, it is soul survival. It is an intimate act, silent, often invisible, but absolutely revolutionary. In the end, perhaps the most important question is not what is controlling us, but what are we allowing to define us? Because even if the outside world is shaped for distraction, the final freedom still belongs to us. The freedom to look within, to think deeply, to choose not just what gives us pleasure, but what gives us meaning. Aldous Huxley didn't write Brave New World just as a warning. He wrote it as a mirror. And in that mirror, we may see something that frightens us. A society so drugged, so entertained, so satisfied, that it has forgotten what it means to be human. But as long as there is one restless mind, one heart that refuses easy comfort, one soul willing to awaken, there is still hope. Some think this was the end. But beware, the war is not over yet. There are still things left unsaid. These two videos in front of you are not here by accident. One of them speaks of an invisible pattern. That might explain why you sabotage yourself precisely when things start to go right. But I won't tell you which one. You'll have to take the risk. So, which one will you choose? Subscribe to the channel now, because while the majority is asleep, we're here to wake up the few who can still hear. See you in the next video.